Hello and welcome to the Album Man, and today we're going to be finally continuing the Beatles discography, and we're going to be talking about the album A Hard Day's Night. So, this album is the soundtrack to the film of the same name, of course, and I've decided I'm actually going to be reviewing that film soon, hopefully later this week. And this album was, well, it was the third studio album for the Beatles, and as I said, did go with the film. And the film was their first feature-length film, which I believe is in black and white. I haven't seen it quite yet. And yes, I think this album definitely shows a step up in their songwriting, even though it's mainly based around sort of fairly basic 2-minute rock and roll instrumentation and song structure, and what may not push the boundaries as their future albums did of, popular music as a whole. I think this is definitely a step up from with the Beatles, which so far I would consider their weakest album. Especially as this album, it features no covers. The covers really bogs me down on the last two albums, with the exception of something like Twist and Shout as an obvious one. I found a lot of them didn't really suit the Beatles, and the Lennon McCartney songs are just, so much better. So yes, all the compositions are Lennon McCartney. However, this really is a Lennon-dominated album. Most of the songs are actually written by pretty much Lennon himself, with only a few really McCartney-written songs. Okay, so one thing to say just before we get into this, the album is split into two. The first side of the original LP, or the first 7 tracks, were recorded and used as the soundtrack to the film. The other 6 weren't featured in the film, but they were decided they were good enough to be released. So we're going to look at it as a whole. Okay, so now let's look at the opening. A Hard Day's Night, and the title track opens this album starting with just a classic, that great wavy chord from George Harrison that apparently, I don't often get into musical theory much, but apparently it's an F and 9, and this chord just sets the tone for, in my opinion, the best Beatles song up to this point to feature on an album. Let's get that straight, I Want to Hold Your Hand, I'm pretty sure Love Me Do wasn't on an album. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I don't quite understand why you'd... I mean, I understand why they released them as singles, but why they wouldn't put them on an album? I'm not quite sure. I don't quite understand the logic of at time, I suppose, in record companies. But anyway, this song is sung by both Lennon and McCartney, and I think it was actually genuinely co-written by both of them. And it has such a tremendously catchy up-tempo chorus. You can tell... Sorry, that's my face, but you can tell why it was a #1 hit. This song, though... I mean, on an instrumental level, it's just classic, especially that solo in the middle by Harrison, and George Martin's piano as well is just spectacular on this song. And apparently it took Harrison quite a few takes to get this, but definitely this is one of my favourite Harrison solos of this period of the Beatles, definitely. Then we get I Should Have Known Better, and this starts off with an almost Dylan-esque harmonica, which appears throughout the song, and it's actually one of the last songs, I think, to feature on a harmonica. Certainly in the intro, it's the last song, I think. And, well, my Dylan comparison definitely was just for this song, as they did give credit to Dylan for inspiring this song, as the Beatles at that time had been playing a copy of Dylan's Freewheelin', and they all loved, especially Lennon. So this inspired him to write more meaningful lyrics. And this song is a result. Well, I don't think it quite compares to Dylan when it comes to lyrical depth. It certainly has that Beatles catchy pop flair to it. It's mainly acoustic based, but pretty up-tempo song, and another great song. If I Fell, this is quite interesting, as this was Kurt Cobain's favourite Beatles song, interestingly. And it's a very good song, featuring some fantastic harmonies by John and Paul. And interestingly, they actually shared a microphone to achieve this really close, intertwined harmony effect. It's a lovely, delicate song that's quite slow, and definitely one of my favourites on the album. But I'm happy just to dance with you. It's not as good, though, no. This is the only Harrison song on the album. It was written specifically for him, and at that time he really lacked confidence with his vocals. This isn't a great vocal performance from him, I think, to be honest. And it really doesn't do anything very interesting. In fact, Lennon has been quoted saying he wouldn't have sung this song, which really, I don't think, Lennon McCartney thought much of this song themselves. I mean, the almost banjo-like rhythm guitar's alright, but this song just feels very formulaic with no real spark to it. Now we get And I Love Her. again, I just don't think this song is that great. It's a predominantly acoustic-based song, written primarily and sung by Paul for once on this album. It has a decent chorus, but I just think it could have been a little faster and up-tempo. They tend to be my favourite Beatles songs of this era, certainly. Now, the next song appeals to me a tiny bit more, I suppose, Tell Me Why, with its doo-wop chord changes, and I mean, John describes it as a black New York girl group song, and I can sort of see why it does have that R&B influence at the time. And it's a decent, again, up-tempo, fairly catchy song. It doesn't really blow me away. And yeah, it gets quite disappointing at this time on the soundtrack side, but then they redeem themselves. The last track on the soundtrack is the second best song on the album, I'd say. This is Can't Buy Me Love. This is such a classic song that I would assume most people will know. It has that great 12-bar blues feel to it, and 12-bar blues, we're not saying the Beatles really instituted that often. And McCartney provides the vocals, and they are the best vocals without a doubt on the album. I especially love the big screams he lets out into Harrison's nicely played solo. It's one of the best songs from this era, I'd say, with such a memorable chorus. Yeah, I just love this song so much. And now we're going to side 2. And yeah, this starts on the right note. It kicks off the Lennon-written and sung song Any Time At All, which should have been on the soundtrack, but really, as like the song before it, it really is fantastic. I mean, such an awesome chorus in which Lennon sings the first, in which, well, yeah, and the way it's broken is Lennon sings the first, Any Time At All, while McCartney sings the second, as Lennon couldn't quite reach the note. And yeah, also the breakup of this song with the piano section, genius, really adds an extra level to this marvellous piece of pop songwriting. And that's quite an interesting one. I'll Cry Instead. This is rooted in country and western music, which I believe Ringo is quite a fan on. I'm pretty sure focused on a couple of his, obviously, later solo albums. And this, again, a Lennon song. It's about the frustration at, well, being the idol of millions, that the freedom and fun of the early days had gone. And this song, to me, it's just that bit short to really capture me. It doesn't really have time to progress enough to make it that memorable. I mean, I'm not saying any of these songs on here are exactly the longest, are they? I mean, it's early 60s Beatles, but the length really is one of my gripes about the Beatles' earlier work, as I do like longer songs. I think they tend to have more impact, more meaning, and, you know, just better, I suppose. But, you know, they definitely write some nice, catchy, short stuff. But, you know, they do rectify this problem, obviously, later in their career. Now, things we said today, this is a little more somber than the rest of the songs on the album. It focuses on Paul's frustration with the relationship between him and his then-girlfriend, Jane Asher, as they were both career people. And it's a nice change of pace on the album, a nice heartfelt vocal performance from Paul. And overall, it's a nice song. I wouldn't say it's particularly outstanding, but it is a nice song. Now, the last 3 songs on the album are all Lennon songs, the first being When I Get Home, which is essentially a rock and roll song. Musically, it seems fairly simplistic, though effective, as the Beatles often are, and this song is just so hard to resist with its damn catchy chorus and Beatles-esque charm to it, to be honest. Then we get another rock. Yeah, I mean, this one is a rock-solid song. Then we get You Can't Do That. And this has a really interesting guitar sound, I think. This is from Harrison. He's debuting his Rickenbacker 360 Deluxe Electric 12-string guitar. And I just love the sound of this thing. It sounds beautiful. It has this great chiming quality to it, especially with his lead work. It's to die for, that guitar sound. Love that guitar so much. Though, as usual, the Beatles, one of the things that stands out the most is the vocal performance and chorus. And lastly, is one of the worst tracks on the album, I'd say, I'll Be Back. The song that lacks a chorus, but I mean, that isn't always a bad thing. But just for this song, it really sort of hits the nail in the coffin. There's just nothing to carry this fairly average melody. I mean, the song's very downbeat, and you wouldn't really expect that necessarily from the closer to an early Beatles album. It's a little odd, it feels, yeah. Still, overall, I think this album is a step up in songwriting, and I'm certainly pleased it had no covers, especially though, but for me, many of the songs are too short, and they still lack the musical maturity we'll see later on down the line. And there were still some duds here. I mean, this is, you know, definitely not, you know, not a perfect album by any any stretch of the album. Still, I enjoyed it quite a lot. I'm going to give this album a 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely better than With the Beatles, only by a bit, but I'd say it is a better album, and yeah, you know, it is a pretty classic album. So this has been the Album Man. Thanks for watching, comment, rate, subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll.